Well, am I ever glad we decided to go testing, because it turns out we didn't know what we didn't know. All right, we're coming to you today from the Arrowhead Ranch Soapbox Derby track on Camano Island, Washington, about 10 minutes from our house, and we have here our trusty Derby Downs wrecking truck, just in case we need it. Cars end up in the ditch, because today, what are we doing, Ron?
Today we're doing testing.
Testing of our Derby cars. So we're going to take you through a test program and show you how it works. So come on along. All right, well, thanks for joining us out here. We're going to talk to you today about a test program we're doing. Not going to talk to you about the specifics of the test program because that's competition sensitive for now. But suffice to say, they've been making some changes to the Masters rules, and we're trying to examine some of those factors and see how they may or may not play into our setups going forward. But what we want to talk to you about is how you do any kind of testing, and Derby testing, or really this applies to almost any kind of scientific testing you might do. We follow the same basic methods when we test airplanes at Boeing. Ronan, what method are we following here?
So the method that me and my dad are following is the scientific method.
Scientific method. So that's basically you kind of come up with a hypothesis. You figure out a ways that you can vary one variable at a time. You try to not vary more than one so you can see what the specific effect is. You got to try to make sure that you're unbiased, meaning you don't want to come to a conclusion ahead of time and then go find data to prove yourself right. You want to come in being as unbiased as possible and measuring with an open mind. So we set up 5 different major configurations that we're studying here, and then we're going to run them through tests, gather data, multiple points on each one so that we can average them, because there are variations in driving, in track temperature, in wind, etc. We did find out, and actually we're filming this actually after we've done a lot of the testing, and one of the things we found is the type of testing you do on a Derby car. And many of you who are experienced in Derby will know this. It's extremely sensitive to wind or track temperature. So we actually set up 5 days ago and spent 4 days out here off and on, not all day long, in the evenings, mornings, trying to find still air and trying to find somewhat consistent track temperatures. And sometimes we needed to test, you know, a configuration in the morning and then later when it was warmer to try to see what the effect would be. But it's gathering a lot of data. It's about being patient. Ronan, what did you learn during the testing here?
Just that wind and the weather has a big change to speed.
Yeah. And we had to go to extreme measures to make sure everything was repeatable. Remember, setting the car in the ramps, the way we set things up, making sure that we don't have crossbind in the car, making sure that our spindles are all the same, making sure our weight stays the same, except when we're varying things in that area, and so that we can get very repeatable, accurate results. All right, getting ready to run a test starts in the shop. It starts with getting the car tuned up in all respects, making sure that there are no variables. A theme you're going to pick up during our discussions here about the testing is the removal of variables. We don't want things to vary other than the one variable that we are changing between each test run. So we want to have everything as consistent as possible. And one of the key things on this test that helped was the wheels here, the TPC wheels. I'll tell you a little more about. All right, these TPC wheels were loaned to us by Paul Gale from Los Angeles. Paul was also kind enough to loan us the zero error ramps that we used. He was really supportive of this testing. For those that raced in the USDR Chattanooga Invitational last Thanksgiving, you may recognize these type of wheels. This is a similar. We've gone through these and balanced them. That's what these little silver discs of foil are about. These are really nice wheels as far as testing goes because they're extremely consistent. We also spin tested the sets we have, make sure they all kind of performed about the same. And we marked these little marks. Let's see here. These little marks on the tire, and then there were marks on the ramps as well, both laterally in left and right, and forward and aft, so that we could put the wheels in the exact same orientation each time. So if there were any kind of a heavy spot, you wouldn't have that be a variable. The nice thing about these wheels versus a Z-Glass wheel is they're a molded body. They do have the same kind of sealed bearings as a Z-Glass wheel, the newer Z-Glass wheels. They have an overmolded urethane tire, so it's actually molded to the wheel. So it removes a key variable on the Z-Glass wheel, which is the slipping of the tire between the wheel. A Z-Glass wheel will push the tire around like the wake on a boat, and if you put a mark on the tire and the rim and then run it down the track, you'll get back and find that it's rotated opposite of the direction of rotation, an amount that varies between wheels, and that can take a wheel from being round to out of round or balanced out of balance, and it's just a variable that can make differences between runs. It makes calibrating Z-Glass wheels nearly an impossible task. But you don't have any other problem with the TPC wheels. These are also similar to the wheels they run at the NDR Nats. The ones there are billet aluminum body, but the same urethane overmolded tire. Another thing that's nice is these are turned, so they have exactly a 12-inch diameter on each wheel. They're extremely true and round. Great wheels for testing. All right, before we could do any testing, we had to spend an afternoon out here kind of getting the track ready to go for testing. Because Arrowhead Ranch has kind of uneven pavement on some parts of the track, we chose the second half of the track to test on. So we have about a 450 foot test section here, it's all of really smooth pavement. This asphalt's only 3 years old. It's the contours are fairly consistent here, so we don't have the car getting faster or slower. What do we have to do to get the track ready to go, Ronan?
In order to get the track ready to go, we had to come out here with this leaf blower and blow off the track, and then we marked like with a string, a straight line, curved in this lane though, and then we put tape down so we'd know where the line was and so I could follow it when I was driving. And then we put the flags down there and to tell which way the wind is blowing and how hard the wind is blowing. That's about it.
Yep. Yeah, right. And yeah, the purpose of the tape is, again, so we can tell that he's going on the same run every time. There is a little bit of crown on this track, so if you get off the line, you'll either go faster or slower. And so we can use that video evidence if we have a run that doesn't make sense to kind of just make sure. But the main goal is he puts it on there, and actually we're done testing now, and he's done something on the order of like 60 runs, and they were all within a few inches of those lines, so that he was able to generate us very, very solid test information. Thanks, Ronan. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the instrumentation that we're using on the car, and both of the key instruments we used were from made by Evan Schilling and his son Owen in Columbia, Missouri. They have a company called Freefall Concepts. Check them out on their Facebook site there. They offer really outstanding derby instruments at a very, very fair price. So we have two of them. They look similar, but they're not. The first one is a steering monitor. So the steering monitor is hooked to an electronic dial indicator up here at the front. So sweep that steering, Ronan. You can see as he sweeps the steering, it's moving that dial indicator back and forth. And it's actually set to millimeters right now, but we usually have it on inches. But you get the idea. That's connected via a wire that's taped under the car, and we can take the shell off with it out moving this stuff, which is nice. And then we have this rack on the back here, and go ahead and sweep that steering again, Ronan. You can see it's picking up basically the same readings that are on the dial indicator being picked up here, and it records this as you're going down the track, and it records it in quarters, and a 25-foot ramp section to give you extra information during the start, where it's really important. And it gives you information on the number of times you went back and forth, the total amount of steering movement you had, things like the average and the standard deviation, so you can see if you had any wild swings in there, or they were pretty consistent small swings. So it's really handy. Another piece of information, if you're trying to decipher why a run might have been fast or slow, you can take a look at the steering data as one of your inputs and see how that went. Now the other piece of instrumentation, and this is probably the key one, is Evan's and Owen's steering derby computer, or speed computer, I guess they call it. And it'll show you, let's see, let me go to recall data here. Recall, so this is the last race we did, so it'll show you the time, the maximum speed you reached. That's 17.48 miles per hour. We're on a slow track here. It'll tell you where on the track. That was at 310 feet we hit that speed, and how far into the run. It was 19.883 seconds into the run. This thing's extremely accurate. It uses 6 magnets, and for us to use it with the TPC wheels, we had to make these special magnet mounts. You can see the pickup there. It's a Hall effect sensor, so as the magnet sweeps by, it picks it up. We made these little holders for the magnets. On a Z-glass wheel, they just go into the screw holes really neatly and stick to the screws, but the TPC wheels didn't have the screws, so we had to 3D print some little holders that are then fastened to the wheels to hold the magnets. And this thing will give you speed data, as you can see there, to what's the equivalent of a 1/10,000th of a mile per hour, and it's actually calculating it inside to 100,000th of a mile per hour, so it's very accurate. And it gives you, there's the max, then it gives you your maximum speed in the ramp area, which is the first 25 feet, and also how far into it, 5.399 seconds into it. It'll give you your Q1 data, the first quarter, Q2, Q3, and Q4. And those quarters correspond to, on the track you can see our wind flags. That's at the quarter points, so 25%, 50, 75, and finish line. And so that lets us take a look at the data from the steering or the derby computer, and we've got video. We take video of every run, and you can see as the car's going by, was there a puff of wind or not. We've tried to actually run when there's 0 wind, but sometimes you'll get a little hint of a puff, and that you can tell where it was on the track, where the car was, correlate that to the data, and help you really get accurate results. All right, so this is the gate setup we used for the testing. We picked a couple of sections of pavement that had no crossbind in them, so we checked that really carefully, and then we laid down these strips of white tempered masonite to give us a nice firm smooth surface to get the car started on. Steel would have been nice, but this was more available and easier to do, and it seems to work pretty good. It's taped down really well with Gorilla Tape, so it's not moving up and down or anything, and we kind of tapered the end so the cars come off really smooth. Put some foil tape there. We're using zero air electric gates. There's some things that are nice about that, and here, Ronan, why don't you show how that works?
So there's a little switch on this thing right here, and then it's
powered from a car battery there.
Yeah, it's powered from a car battery, and there's a magnet inside of the gate, and right now the magnet's on. If you just flip release on this, then the gate will go down.
So drop that gate. There we go. It comes open. It's nice. It springs open really fast, so it flies away from the nose, so you don't have to worry about that influencing your results. You get a nice clean drop every time. It's a little safety block you put in there. You can kind of see it in here. Keeps the car from getting loose when you don't want it to. But these have been really good for using on the test here. And then behind Ronan, you can kind of see our test setup. We got a data table. We've got our red setup table that's all leveled out back behind there. That gives us a really firm level spot to work on the cars and check crossbind and stuff like that. And the trailer that we brought everything in. All right, Ronan, why don't you explain the data table here and what we got going on?
So we have this binder to write down environmental information, and in order to get that environmental information, we have these two tools right here. This is the infrared thermometer, and it tells the temperature of the track. And then right here we have the thermo anemometer. It tells how like warm or cold it is outside, the temperature, and if you hold this up, then you can tell how windy it is, mile per hour wind. And then we have our iPad, which just has information on it. That's about it.
All right. Well, this is what we've been doing a lot of here. What are we doing, Ronan?
Sitting here waiting for the wind to die down.
Yeah, if you look out here, you can see the windmill going down there. We've got about 5 to 7 mile an hour winds into our face here, and that is enough to make the data no good. So we've just had to wait. This is our 4th day at the track testing, looking for good conditions, and we found them a few times, but we've done a lot of waiting as well. All right, Ronan, you ready to go? Let me get the towels. Saddle it. Energizing the gate. You ready, Ronan? All right, count of 3. 3, 2, wait, let me, hang on, count of 3. 3, 2, 1. He's little left of the line, little left, little outside. Now he's pretty well on it. Hint of tailwind here, maybe a half mile of that. Good run, good run. This is our high-tech car return that we're using for the test program. All right, data collection for configuration 2, run number 1. There's total. There's ramp. Q1. Q2. Q3. And Q4. Here's the speed. This one had a tiny headwind toward the end, so we'll see what that did here. Okay, 17,355. Let's count. Kind of not surprising. Okay. There's your ramp. There's your Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. All right, well, we're back home from testing. And want to say just a word here about what we thought was going to be video Champion's Journey episode number 9. Our part 2 of our setup video is delayed. The reason is the racing that we were going to do in Oregon, Best of the West, it's usually the biggest rally race in the western United States every year, already was delayed from May to August, and it ended up getting canceled altogether because of COVID and the situation there in Oregon getting a little bit worse. So because of that, the car that we were going to do the setup video on, my niece Bella's stock car, didn't have access to that. So we kind of changed things up and did this test video. But for those that are getting ready to set up cars for hopefully the resumption of rally racing, we've got that video coming at some point here, probably in the next month or so. We'll try to get it done. Might be after Nats, we'll see just what we can fit in. Want to say a couple words about why testing isn't all that common in Derby. I mean, people have done it over the years, we've done it a few times. It's hard work. You can see here I kind of broke a sweat just cleaning up all the stuff out of the trailer. It is a lot of work to logistically getting everything set up. It's a lot like running a race almost. It's a lot of fun, but it's hard to do. It takes some specialty work. I didn't say anything before, but there's 2 main types of testing in Derby that I'm aware of. Maybe there's some others that I'm not aware of, but what we've done up in the past is head-to-head racing, where you have one car is a control car that you don't change anything on, and one car you're varying things on. And you send them both down, and you can use normal differential timing equipment like most tracks have, and just see you know, which one, as you vary things, does it get your new one car faster or slower. You need to do it repeatedly to make up for differences. Downsides to that type of testing are you have to have 2 drivers capable of putting it on a repeated line again and again. So you need 2 good drivers. The upside to it is it doesn't take as much equipment. It's nice in that as the weather conditions change, both cars are affected the same way. So if the track gets hotter or there's a headwind or a tailwind, in theory, both cars are affected somewhat similarly, so they're less sensitive to that. Now that we did the instrumented testing where the car itself is generating the data, and it's really easy to do now with this equipment that Freefall Gravity Concepts has put out. And their equipment is not very pricey, to be honest. I think it's about $175 or something for the speed computer, which is really the most valuable. Their steering computer, similarly priced, is very, very good one too. But even the speed computer alone is a really potent little tool, and lets you go out and do testing without a whole lot of setup. It's really an awesome tool. So now the downsides to instrumented testing, as we found out, really sensitive to weather, both track temperature and wind. And we had wind that varied from 0, which we tried to do most of our testing with no absolutely still air, to sometimes we're sitting out there with 20-mile-an-hour headwinds or tailwinds, and we just couldn't do anything other than go home. Track temperature too varied. You get out there in the morning, the track temperature would be 70 degrees, and the hottest day we were out there, which was a pretty hot day for the Northwest, it was like a 90-degree sunny day. The track temperature we measured at 130 degrees at one point. So, and even on a normal sunny high 70s day, the track temperature was getting up to 110 degrees. So that does affect the runs. You have to account for that. Maybe test some when it's hot, some when it's cold, average them, different approaches you can take. Or try to do, it's very difficult to do the testing all at the same temperature because it varies so much over the course of the day. So those were some of the challenges. Oh, you know, setting up to the first day, we thought we were going to bang out most of our testing in one day. The first day, we spent a long day at the track just sorting out instrumentation, and we had problems with everything. Each one of the instruments required a little bit of tweaking to get it to work properly and get it calibrated to run the car down and measure the track, get all that stuff accurately put into the instrument so it'd be accurate. We had issues as mundane as like our iPhone overheating and not wanting to film. We had issue with the ramps that we sorted out. I mean, one thing after another, and by the end of the first day, all we had was 2 usable data runs. And then the next 4 days, we came back trying to find good weather conditions. Thankfully, the track wasn't being used for anything at the time, and the weather was nice, so we could keep everything set up out there. Now we're home with the data. We've gone through some of it. Still a lot of data analytics. There's at least 2 good nights of going through the data we generated. Every single run generated 40 data points between the steering and the speed computer. 40 key data points. So you can multiply that by however many runs we had, and it's hundreds and hundreds of data points that we're sorting out and doing a little bit of math on them to try to figure out what the actual results are. So ultimately, was it worth it? I think absolutely it was. We already had insight after analyzing the first third of the data. After a day or two, we started to see trends. We adjusted what we were testing and definitely learned things that we would not have learned racing. So it was worth it. I advise others who are serious about their derby racing to set up a test program. It's an awesome way to teach kids about just the science, technology, engineering, math side of things here. It doesn't take a lot of money. You can do it on even a small private road or a parking lot and get good data. We had a test section that was just over, braking area included was 450 feet, and maybe about 450. It wasn't the full track, and we got really usable data because you're really interested in what's happening in that first 25% of your run. That's where races are won and lost. But again, advise it. Said a lot here about testing. Hopefully it was interesting, and we'll see you next time. Take care.